Hello everybody and welcome back to the Unreal Engine 5 beginner tutorial. Last time we made this door right here, and if we approached the door, it would open up. How did we do that? On component begin overlap. Well, if the other component or other actor is the first person character, then we open the door. Now, this isn't very practical because obviously if you're making a game, having the door just open every single time you approach it and then never close isn't exactly user-friendly, it's not responsive, it's not great. So we're going to use variables to improve upon this. A variable is exactly what you remember from math. X equals, 2 or 3 or 74. Or because we're doing programming, X could literally equal open. And why does this matter? This matters because within our door BP, if you want to go ahead and open that up, we are now going to toggle the door instead of just opening it with the help of a Boolean. So a Boolean is just a true or false statement. For example, if you want a metaphor, a light switch. If you hit the light switch up, the light turns on. If you hit it down, it turns off. Or true or false. A light switch is a physical form of a Boolean. So in order to add a variable, what we're going to do is on the left-hand side here next to variables, we are going to click the plus. You'll see that we're immediately prompted to name it, and we're going to name it open. So our Boolean is named open, and what we're going to do now is save and compile. If you don't save and compile, then you can't edit the new variable that you just created. If you look on the right-hand side in the details panel, you'll see that the default value of the Boolean is currently false, and we know this because it's not checked. If I was to check it, that would be true, and then we uncheck it, it is false. So how can we use this variable to change what happens depending on if we want the door open or close? Well, the first thing we want to do is program the door so it can close. Right now we just have it set up to open. Well, luckily closing the door is as simple as right-clicking and typing in custom event, and we're going to name it close door. And it's pretty much the exact same code as the open door. So if we take these two, copy them, paste them, and plug them into the close door, it's almost set up to be able to close. If you remember correctly, that was my Discord, by the way, don't worry about yours. If you remember correctly, the target relative rotation on open is -90, and on close, it was 0. So all we have to do is set the close to 0 and keep the open to -90. If you forget what I'm talking about, back here in the viewport, this is the closed position. If we click on the door, you'll note that its rotation is 0. And then whenever it's -90, it's in the open position. Back in the event graph, we are now going to set a Boolean depending on whether the door is open or closed. And we're going to do that with the Boolean we already created. In order to change a Boolean in our code, what we need to do is take this Boolean and drag it onto the event graph. And we'll have get or set. Getting the variable will simply say what is its current state, whereas setting the variable lets us set whether we want it to be true or false. So if we take this on the move component to and plug it in, since this is the open door, we want open to be true. Since this is the closed door, we'll drag it out, we will set it, and leave it false. So now, whenever the code that opens the door runs, it will set it to open, or set it to true rather, and when it closes, it will set it to false. We can use this information to toggle the door instead of just opening the door. So we're going to go ahead and click on open door and press delete. Now there's two ways to add the node that we're about to do. You can right click and simply type in the word branch and you'll get the node we're looking for. However, a quicker way to do it is to hold B on your keyboard, B for branch, and left click on the event graph. Now we'll plug in the cast to the branch, and we'll drag open onto the event graph, and we will select get. If you remember, get simply just asks what the current variable is. It doesn't set anything. So since we've gotten it, we can plug it into the branch. And now the branch will run different code depending on if it's true or false. So in this case, we want to check, is the door open? If true, the door is open, then we want to run close door. If false and the door is closed, we want to run open door. And we can go ahead and hit save and compile. If we head back to our map and hit play, now every time we get close to the door, it will open or close depending on if it's already currently open or closed. And this is accomplished by setting one variable. Now let's talk about public variables. Most variables are considered private. You can see here that the I here is closed. That's because the open boolean that we created is indeed private. However, we can create a public variable that we can adjust on the fly per blueprint from the viewport. Let me show it what I mean by that. If we click on the eyeball, it will open up, and now it is a public variable. If we hit save and compile and head back to the first person map, you'll note that in the details panel on the right hand side, we now have open as a default variable that we can change outside of the blueprint. Why is this useful? Well, let's head back into the door BP and talk about a way that we can use this. If we go up here to the top, or anywhere, it doesn't have to be specifically the top, but I like to keep event begin play at the top. And we create the event begin play. You can either just right click like normal and type in event begin play, or you can hold P on your keyboard like how I did and just click, and you will get the event begin play. Event begin play happens the second the game starts. If the level is loaded, event begin play immediately runs. It also runs if you spawn something in. So let's say you have a bomb, and the second that bomb spawns into the game, you want it to delay for 3 seconds and then explode. If you spawned that bomb in and had the delay and explode connected to the event begin play, this code would fire the second the bomb spawned. Now, since we have this boolean as public, let's go ahead and grab it and plug it in to another branch. On event begin play, we're going to check and see if the door is set to open or close. If it's set to open, in this case, we are going to run open door. We're not going to close it because we're not toggling it. We're checking, is it open? Yes, okay, then make sure it's open. Is it open? No, then make sure it's closed. Now, if we hit save and compile and go back to our first person map, you'll see that by default it's closed and nothing happens. However, if we change that public variable to true and then hit play, you'll note that the door immediately opens. This is because the event begin play gets called immediately. It checks to see what the variable is set to, runs a branch, and then does the code accordingly. There's all kinds of variables that you can use within the Unreal Engine. For example, let's say we wanted this target relative location to be something that's different for every door. Something we could do then is if we hover over, make a variable for that. If we open this up, or not open, but create another variable, let's name it rotation. And then on the right hand side, it's default set to Boolean. Let's open that up. You'll see here that one of the options is a rotator. If we click on that and set it to public, then remember we can't edit it until we save and compile. You'll see on the right hand side here that we have the rotation and it's all set to 0 currently. If we plug that in to the target relative rotation, hit save and compile, and head back to the first person map, you'll see that the rotation is now here. Let's say we don't want it to go to -90. Let's say this door in particular, we want to go to -120. If we type that in to our public variable here and hit play, you'll see that now anytime the door opens, it has a much wider arc than the 90. It's going way past 90 up to the 120. Or we could make it super small. Let's make it -10 and hit save and play. And you'll see now, look, the door barely even moves when it's opening and closing because the rotation is much smaller. Brief intermission. I just wanted to let you know that I have a Patreon down below. It helps support me to make these videos. If you're enjoying them and want me to be able to keep doing these, please consider supporting my Patreon. Let's get back to it. To take variables one step further, we can also do something like create a random event. Let's go ahead and take this code here and move it off to the right. We'll unplug this by holding an Alt and clicking on the arrow. And now we have all this free space. Let's right click and type in random integer, and you're gonna select the one that says in range. Now, while this isn't a defined variable, it is still a variable because we're gonna get a random number. Let's get a random number between 0 and 1. Note that in coding, most of the time, 0 is the first position. It is not 1, but 0. So for example, if you had a grocery list that said milk, eggs, and cheese, milk is in the 0th position. Eggs would be in the first position, and cheese would be in the second position. Now, let's set open. So we'll go ahead and hit set. We'll set open depending on whether or not we get 0 or 1. To do this, we'll drag out and we'll type in equal. And we'll click on equal. Now you see, it will run between 0 and 1, and then it will say, does it equal 0? And we'll plug that into the set. So if it does equal 0, open will be set to true. If it equals 1, it will be false, and open will be set to false. Let's plug this in like this. Now, every time we get close to the door, we are gonna have a random event. Will it open or will it close? Practically, it's not that great, but it's good for the lesson. So let's go ahead and hit save and compile. I'm gonna reset the rotation to -90 back where it was, and we'll hit play. So now, every time we approach the door, it will either stay open or it will close. In this case, it closed. Let's try again. This time, it stayed closed. Let's try again. Again, stayed closed. Now I'll do this a few more times so we can actually get an open here. There we go. So this is how you create random events using variables. I hope this brief explanation of variables helped you learn how to better improve your blueprints, and I hope to see you in the next episode of Unreal Engine 5 for beginners. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support me on my Patreon if you'd like to see more of this content.